Have you ever walked into a luxurious place and known from the very first glance that people were sizing you up? Not by your name, but by your skin color, your clothes, or your age. Have you ever wondered, if you never told them who you were, would they still treat you like a human being? Today's story doesn't begin with a lawsuit. It begins with a man quietly walking into a bank, believing that if he lived with integrity, people would treat him with dignity. And it ends when an entire system is forced to answer the question, do we still deserve the trust that others once placed in us? If you've ever believed that kindness and humility would be met with respect, stay until the end, because you may just see yourself in every glance they tried to look past. Before we begin, please like this video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support gives us the strength to keep sharing powerful, soul-stirring stories like this one. Let's begin. Halden City, Monday morning. The air was crisp. A thin veil of fog clung to the windows of the tall office buildings. At the Marston Square branch of Sterling Crest Bank, the doors opened as usual. The rhythm was familiar, polished dress shoes clicking across marble, coffee dripping, keyboards tapping. This was a place where surprises were not welcome. Samuel Hayes walked in at 9:03 a.m. No bodyguards, no advance call, no signs to reveal that this black man, wearing a simple grey coat, worn khaki trousers, and shoes freshly polished for the second time, was in fact the founder and CEO of Briarstone Capital, a firm overseeing billions in national strategic investments. But today, Samuel hadn't come to sign deals. He wasn't there to review profit reports. Today, he came as an ordinary man, a man who carried no authority with him, only one final belief, that if you enter a place with kindness and respect, you will be treated with fairness. He stood in the center of the grand lobby, where the chandelier light shimmered across the marble floor. No one knew his name. No one recognized the face once featured in Forbes profiles. And perhaps that was exactly what he came to test. At the entrance, Derek Shaw, the towering security guard, eyed him up and down, then approached with a half-smile. "You're lost, sir. The food bank's across the street, not here." Samuel didn't flinch. He didn't frown. He didn't step back. He simply reached into his coat, pulled out a thin leather wallet, and silently held out his ID dash. A gesture that needed no words, only the decency of the other to read. Derek gave it a quick glance, then shrugged, as if even an ID couldn't override the wrong-colored skin of someone they hadn't been expecting. Samuel moved on, quietly. He seemed to float through the thick atmosphere of judgment, each footstep slow, deliberate, neither hesitant nor seeking to command attention. At the front desk stood Rachel Moore, hair neatly pinned up, her gaze cold like the bulletproof glass behind her. She greeted him with a scripted smile. "How can I help you?" "I have an appointment with the high-value client services department." "Name?" "Samuel Hayes." She typed, paused. "You're not on the schedule today. Are you sure you're at the right branch?" "I'm sure." She didn't probe further. Instead, she picked up a pale grey visitor badge and slid it across the counter. "Please wait in the unverified guest area, over there, near the ATM." No offer to sit, no offer of water, just a voice issuing redirection. As if he had accidentally stepped into a world that wasn't meant for him. And Samuel went. No protest, no glance back. But as he turned toward the unverified guest area, the ceiling camera captured a peculiar image, a king walking alone into his own castle. While the guards mistook him for a beggar, The unverified guest waiting area sat tucked behind a row of ATMs, facing the parking lot through a wall of glass. No leather chairs, no complimentary drinks, no framed art on the walls. Just 3 grey plastic seats, scuffed at the edges, cold as the stares from those who passed by. Samuel sat down, back straight, hands resting on his knees, a slim leather briefcase placed carefully at his feet. Every movement was composed, measured, and quietly treated as suspicious. From the monitoring desk near the VIP lounge, Brandon Lee, the floor manager, glanced in his direction. He didn't check the appointment logs, didn't ask who the man was. One glance was enough for him to mutter to his assistant, "Probably someone on welfare. We had a guy last week pretend to be a high net worth client. Almost walked away with 50 grand by mistake." The assistant stifled a laugh, hand over her mouth, and nodded. Brandon, in a voice not loud, but just loud enough to drift beyond the desk. "That coat looks second-hand. Flag his profile, double-check everything." Samuel heard every word, but he didn't react. No lowered gaze, no turned head. He simply looked down at his hands, hands capable of signing deals that shaped markets, now being scrutinized like a crumpled banknote. At the teller counter nearby, a white woman with pearl earrings and a man checking stock prices on his smartwatch walked directly into the priority client area. No one asked if they had appointments. A manager stepped out to offer them espresso. An assistant held the door open to the frosted glass room, with a view of the skylight and imported bonsai trees. And Samuel, still seated in the cold grey zone, where the only thing he was offered was suspicion wrapped in silence. 1 minute, then 5, then 12. No one approached, no one offered assistance, no one asked if he needed anything, only glances, discreet but unrelenting, from every direction. At the front desk, Rachel Moore looked over again, not to help, just to make sure that the strange man still hadn't left. Prejudice doesn't need proof, it just needs the chance to reveal itself. And today, dressed simply and carrying a quiet dignity, Samuel was the perfect opportunity for the system to show its true face. Samuel stood up. He walked to the unverified guest desk, a side station tucked near the emergency exit with no signage, no assigned staff. A slanted plastic placard sat on the counter. "Please wait your turn. Walk-ins not accepted." Even though he had an email confirming his appointment from 3 days ago, Samuel didn't present it right away. He wanted to see --. If he didn't invoke power, would the system still preserve dignity? A female employee appeared behind the bulletproof glass. Her name tag read, Denise L. She didn't smile, didn't greet, didn't ask anything except for a very slight, very cold nod. Samuel placed a few items gently on the counter. "I have an appointment with the investment director, 10:15 a.m. Samuel Hayes. Here's my account number." Denise looked at him, then at the screen, then back at him, longer than necessary. "Do you have a printed confirmation?" "I have it on my phone." "I'm sorry, I can only process printed schedules with a verification code." She didn't return his ID. She simply pointed to the plastic chair behind him. "Please wait there. You'll be called if someone is available." Samuel nodded quietly. He was no stranger to rejection, dressed in professionalism. But here, at Sterling Crest Bank, the very institution that once mailed him partnership invitations on Italian watermarked paper, inked in gold, he was being tested for the right to exist in a space he had once helped shape. As he turned from the counter, Brandon Lee glanced over again. He had just stepped away from the espresso station, tablet in hand, muttering, "Another relief file, trying to see a portfolio manager. We've had a flood of these lately." The assistant stifled a laugh. Brandon tapped a few lines into the screen, as if logging a risk to be filtered out. Samuel's phone lit up. A message from inside Briarstone Capital. "Samuel, Investment Division, asking why you haven't joined the meeting with Sterling Crest." He read it, then turned off the screen. No reply, no hurry, no correction. Because if he had to announce himself as chairman just to be respected, then this bank didn't deserve him. A child ran past, cocoa in hand. The mother, wearing a Chanel dress, quickly pulled her child aside, as if Samuel might somehow dirty the carpet. Sunlight streamed in, but there was no warmth. A soft voice echoed over the intercom. "Sterling Crest Bank, celebrating difference, connecting value." An empty slogan. In a building that failed to recognize the real value quietly sitting inside it. 10:33 a.m. Samuel Hayes was still standing in the unverified guest zone. No one had called his name. No one had asked another question. Not a single glance had been offered with goodwill. A newly arrived guest, white, dressed in a light-colored blazer, was offered espresso within 2 minutes. But Samuel? Still standing. Alone. With a confirmed appointment email still sitting in his phone. Completely ignored. He picked up his phone, opened the meeting confirmations folder. The line was still there. In-person meeting with Portfolio Director, Sterling Crest Bank. 10:15 a.m., Monday, Marston Square branch. He looked at the screen, then turned it off. He didn't flash it, didn't raise his voice, didn't demand, because he still wanted to believe. Flashback. Samuel at 14 years old, standing outside the city administrative building. A pressed school uniform, a scholarship application in hand. The receptionist had said that day, "The scholarship office is around the side, not through the main door." He bit his tongue and walked away. The next day he returned. With transcripts, with patience. And he was accepted. Samuel learned a lesson that day. If you're decent and persistent enough, the door will open. Now he faced a new kind of test. Can a man, without flaunting power, without designer labels, be treated with the same fairness as anyone else? Can one still believe in the kindness of a system, simply by choosing to act with dignity? Samuel didn't reply to Briarstone Capital's message. He typed a draft, then deleted it. "I'm trying to see whether being ordinary is enough." He didn't send it. He simply looked around, still hoping for one decent human gaze, but something inside him had begun to shift. It wasn't patience anymore. It was a cold sadness. The kind that creeps in when you realize maybe everything you believed about fairness, if you live rightly, was just an illusion. An employee walked by and whispered to a colleague, "Why's that guy still standing there? Isn't he embarrassed?" The whisper wasn't quiet. Samuel heard it. But he didn't turn his head. He simply adjusted his collar and kept standing. A little while longer, while Samuel Hayes remained standing in the unverified guest area, the glass door to the left swung open. A man entered, dressed in a fitted blue shirt, gleaming red tie, and shoes that clacked sharply on the marble floor. Philip Graves, a senior associate well known in Holden City banking circles. Not just for his charm and wide connections, but for his habit of sneering while smiling. He didn't check name tags, didn't ask questions. He just glanced at the creased coat on Samuel's shoulders and scoffed. "Hey there, friend. Looking for the winter shelter? It's down the block, left at the bakery." His tone was light as if joking, but loud enough for 3 staffers behind the counter to burst into laughter. Samuel said nothing. A woman in a Zara business dress, seated in the VIP lounge nearby, glanced over. Her lips curled faintly. She shook her head, the way one might at something sad but amusing. Philip tilted his head and stepped closer. Or maybe you're looking to exchange a bus pass. I might be able to help with that. But investment portfolios? Probably not your department, huh? Meanwhile, Ethan Clark, a junior associate, had been eavesdropping nearby. He leaned toward Rachel Moore and whispered, "What if he's a secret shopper, like a disguised client test?" Rachel smirked. "With that jacket? If he's testing us, he'd at least wear a suit." Brandon Lee, the floor manager, stood within earshot. He heard everything, did nothing, said nothing, just folded his arms and let it all unfold, as if this were just another routine rehearsal. Samuel didn't respond, didn't walk away, didn't show any reaction. Only his eyes, which had remained steady and composed from the start, began to shift, not to anger, not to helplessness, but to a quiet, settling disappointment. The kind that seeps in like water through stone. None of them knew that the man they were mocking, like some passing fool, had spoken at the International Strategic Forum just 2 months ago. And today he had deliberately left all titles and power behind, just to see what kind of treatment awaited him if he showed up as an ordinary man. And now that the answer was becoming clear, 9:47 a.m., Samuel Hayes still hadn't been seen by any senior personnel. The elevator behind the teller counter slid open. Derek Shaw, the towering security guard with wary eyes, stepped out from the internal hallway. No questions, no introductions. Just a silent nod, motioning, "Someone wants a word with you. This way." No further explanation. Samuel didn't protest. He simply nodded, picked up the briefcase by his foot, and followed. They walked down a narrow corridor marked "Staff Only." Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Cold grey paint lined the walls. The door shut behind them with a mechanical hiss, like a system sealing itself off from liability. 2 floors above, Craig Dawson, the branch director of Marston Square, was monitoring everything via the surveillance system. His hand hovered on a mouse, flicking between camera feeds. When he saw Samuel being led into the back room, the corner of Craig's mouth curled, as though he had just eliminated a brand risk. The room Samuel entered had no windows, just a cold metal table, a fixed plastic chair, and a red blinking ceiling camera. Derek closed the door. The latch clicked, soft but sharp, echoing through the sterile silence. No greetings, no names exchanged. It took nearly 5 full minutes of silence before a man walked in, wearing an internal compliance badge, holding a clipboard so thin it looked symbolic. "Your full name?" "Samuel Hayes." "Purpose of your visit?" "Scheduled appointment." "Who confirmed it?" "Senior Finance Division." "Do you have proof?" "Email on my phone." "Not sufficient. Do you have a printed copy?" "No, thank you." Not once did he make eye contact. The fluorescent lights above flickered, casting a cold, pale sheen across Samuel's face. He sat upright, hands resting on his knees, briefcase at his side, no signs of anger, no furrowed brow. Just a stillness, one that made the sterile room feel more and more suffocating. This was no longer a verification check. It had become a quiet tribunal, one that questioned the right of someone to even exist in this space. A person who didn't dress like them, didn't speak like them, didn't fit their narrow vision of what a client worth serving looked like. The system didn't care who he was, and unless Samuel revealed himself, to them he was simply a man who did not belong. 10:06 a.m. The room was still cold. The door remained shut. Samuel Hayes sat in silence, the same posture as before. Back straight, eyes forward, hands resting fully on his knees. A new person entered, a woman in a navy blouse, tablet in hand. She didn't look at Samuel when she spoke. "We need to verify a few more things. First, do you typically have someone assist you with financial management?" "I supervise directly." "What about asset analysis? Any advisors or assistants you usually bring?" "I handle it all." She paused, casting a glance at him, as if assessing the honesty of a child. Then the man from earlier returned, this time with someone else, wearing a badge that read Internal Risk Monitoring. His tone was low, aiming for civility, but the phrasing barely concealed a layer of contempt. "We've noticed your account is linked to several out-of-state branches. Why is that?" "I operate across multiple states." "Can you specify the organization?" "Briarstone Capital." A beat of silence. That name sparked no reaction from them, or perhaps they pretended not to know it. "Can you prove you're a legal representative?" "I didn't come here to flaunt authority. I came as a client." The woman frowned. "That attitude is common among those who misunderstand their position." "I misunderstand nothing," Samuel replied. "I simply chose not to flash credentials because I believe human dignity should be enough." Outside the room, Craig Dawson continued watching the entire interrogation through a live surveillance feed. He didn't intervene. He merely murmured into the intercom, "Proceed. Maintain the verification process." Another question was tossed out. "Where did you work before gaining access to high-level banking?" "I built it." No one took notes. They only exchanged fleeting glances, filled with skepticism, thinly veiled mockery, or simple refusal to believe a truth that didn't fit their imagination. A final question landed. "Do you know why you're here?" Samuel raised his head, his gaze now as still as deep water. "Because you don't believe someone like me could be real." The room went silent. No one objected, no one confirmed, because in their eyes, no evidence was stronger than the prejudice they had chosen to believe. From the very first second. 11:12 a.m. The door to the security review room swung open. Derek Shaw signaled for Samuel to follow, without a word of explanation. They didn't take him back to the main lobby. Instead, he was led through a narrow hallway, paint chipping, flickering fluorescent lights above. No more marble floors, no more glass walls. Just stained white paint and footsteps echoing in cold silence. At the end of the corridor, Craig Dawson was already waiting. Arms crossed, expression a blend of smugness and suspicion. "We need to inspect your belongings before you leave the premises," Craig said, eyes fixed on the leather briefcase in Samuel's hand. "Do you have any order authorizing that?" Samuel asked. "This is a bank, not a checkpoint," Craig replied. "But you should understand, unusual behavior gets handled by protocol." No further explanation. Craig yanked the briefcase from Samuel's hand. The lock popped open. Inside dash. Detailed portfolio documents, notarized investment contracts, letters of correspondence between Briarstone Capital and Sterling Crest Bank, spilled to the dirty tile floor. Craig picked one up, flipped it open, glanced over it, then scoffed. "Looks like paperwork for legal aid from a correctional program." Laughter echoed from behind. A passing staff member had overheard. Maybe he found that briefcase at a bus stop. Samuel bent down. He picked up each page, one by one. Not hurried, not panicked, not defensive. He folded the documents with bare hands despite the grimy floor. Never once looking at Craig. He didn't need to. From a distance, a young employee paused mid-step. In her eyes, not fear, but a kind of unease she couldn't quite explain. As Samuel stood up, Craig kept flipping through the rest, still hoping to find some flaw, some proof to validate his bias. This man couldn't be real. But there was nothing. Only the ruthless precision of someone who had once believed in the system. Samuel locked the briefcase again. He stood up straight. His eyes no longer sought recognition. What remained was a silent message, wordless but deafening. I gave you a chance to see me clearly. And now, the prejudice trap they set for him had snapped shut on themselves. 11:26 a.m., Level 2, Craig Dawson's office. The desk phone rang 3 short times, then automatically switched to secure internal communication mode. On the LED screen, an unrecognized code appeared. 01-BR.ST-COM. Craig was buttoning his cufflinks lazily as he picked up the phone, voice sluggish. Craig Dawson, Branch Director, Marston Square, Sterling Crest. How may I help you? On the other end, a woman's voice precise and icy. We're calling from the legal office of Briarstone Capital, requesting confirmation of the completed withdrawal order issued by Chairman Hayes. Total value, 2.66 billion USD. Has your system recorded the transaction? Craig froze. I'm sorry, may I ask who exactly you are? As I said, Briarstone Capital, strategic equity portfolio partner. Please confirm, has your branch executed the disbursement procedure as stipulated under zero-level authority contract? A brief hesitation. Then Craig spun around to his computer screen, entering internal commands. It took 3 seconds for the windows to open, red lines lighting up one after another. Red account locked, strategic portfolio 03. Withdrawal complete, $689 million. Account closed, Briarstone Whitestone Insurance Trust. Priority holding deleted. He stammered, it seems a transaction is underway, but I'll need to confirm with the regional coordination desk. No need. They've received the order. I just need your confirmation that Sterling Crest Bank, Marston Square branch, has officially lost custody of all Briarstone Capital assets. Craig said nothing. The woman's voice dropped slightly, for the first time revealing something almost contemptuous. I believe you'll remember this call for a very long time. And if you still don't understand what's happening, look downstairs. The door hasn't closed yet. Click, the line went dead. Craig still held the receiver to his ear. Cold sweat crept beneath his collar. He didn't look down at the lobby, because he already knew the man they had just humiliated, interrogated like a criminal, was the same man who had just shaken the entire foundation of their bank. Technical flaw, internal data center, Sterling Crest Bank. The system monitor began flashing red warnings in rapid succession. A young IT engineer frowned. Is someone sweeping the system-level accounts? Why are all strategic portfolios disappearing like this? On the screen, account BRCPTL01. Status, permanently locked, level 0 order. Total withdrawn, $2,663 million. Time, 9:03 a.m., Halden time. Reason, revoked by keyholder Samuel Hayes. Back on the ground floor, Ethan Clark was quietly accessing the internal system after receiving a message from a friend in external affairs. When the name Samuel Hayes appeared, he turned pale. Level 0. He typed another command. On the screen, keyholder profile. Name, Samuel D. Hayes. Title, Chairman, Briarstone Capital. Access level, full system/override code. Level 0. Sweat trickled down his spine. Ethan turned to Brandon Lee, trembling. We just threw out our biggest stakeholder. Right in front of the entire staff. Brandon didn't answer. He had already pulled up the extracted camera footage of Samuel being escorted out of the compliance room by Derek Shaw. In the frame, Samuel didn't argue, didn't resist. He simply gathered his fallen papers, silently, like a man who had understood the rules of the game all along. At that very moment, on the bank's internal bulletin system, alerts began flashing across every branch. Nationwide alert. Strategic partner terminated. Briarstone Capital. All priority privileges immediately revoked. All branches required to preserve system logs related to client Samuel Hayes. In Craig Dawson's office, the LED indicator shifted to a soft red warning light. He stared at the control panel, no longer in denial. This wasn't a mishap. This wasn't a transaction. This was retribution. A first collapse, silent in sound, but powerful enough to shake the very foundation of Sterling Crest Bank. Main lobby, Marston Square branch. What was once a calm atmosphere had now been ripped open by frantic keystrokes, chaotic phone calls, and the hollow stares of stunned employees. At the internal support desk, Ethan Clark was nearly shouting at the system. Pull up the full access history of the client named Samuel Hayes in the last 72 hours. And his intranet-level access logs too. A line of results appeared, clear, concise, and as cold as a verdict. Client profile. Identifier, SH00 Alpha. Name, Samuel D. Hayes. Role, Chairman, Briarstone Capital. Classification, Keyholder Level 0/full authority over system strategic financial structure. Partnership Agreement, Strategic Tier, M1. Signed 2 years ago with the National Executive Board. Ethan swallowed hard. Beside him, Rachel Moore sat frozen. Her eyes locked onto the screen, her lips murmuring. We didn't recognize him. A young employee nearby asked, "Who is he?" Ethan replied, eyes never leaving the final line on the screen. He's the man this bank gave full control over every Tier A investment fund. The one with veto power over all regional projects. The man who just withdrew $2.6 billion. At that exact moment, the internal scandal leaked outside. A financial blogger in Halden posted a breaking tweet. Breaking, Briarstone Capital just pulled their entire portfolio from Sterling Crest Bank. Rumor has it, they insulted the founder himself. Discrimination. Bank collapse. On the second floor, Craig Dawson gripped the armrest tightly. His face had gone completely pale. An assistant stammered, "He sat there for 2 hours, and we treated him like a fraud." Craig didn't respond. He only stared down through the one-way glass. At the empty seat where Samuel had once sat, a silent presence had left, but the true identity had now been unlocked. And the entire bank was about to pay the price for refusing to see what they didn't want to see. Sterling Crest Bank headquarters, Halden City. Victor Tran, National Chief Executive Officer, was prepping for a board meeting when his personal assistant burst into the room without knocking. "Sir, you need to see this. Now." An iPad was placed on the desk. On screen, an emergency financial alert from the internal system. Level 0 financial alert, full asset transfer from M1 partner. Organization, Briarstone Capital. Amount, 2.66 billion US dollars. Status, completed. Victor frowned. System glitch? Who authorized this? The assistant's voice was hoarse, almost shaking. The withdrawal was authorized by Samuel Hayes, chairman of Briarstone, and we just had him escorted out of Marston Square branch. The entire room fell silent. Then Victor whispered, "Dear God." Sterling Crest stock plummeted 6% within the first 15 minutes of trading. CNBC breaking news. Briarstone Capital has pulled all assets from Sterling Crest Bank. Sources suggest racial discrimination may be the cause. Bloomberg commentary. If confirmed, this would be the largest retaliatory capital withdrawal from a strategic partner in the past 5 years. Federal financial oversight bodies have launched an investigation. Back at Marston Square branch, no one was working. Brandon Lee, the one who had once mocked Samuel, now stood trembling, holding a printed copy of the strategic partner file. At the bottom of the document was Samuel's signature. The policy line read, "Briarstone accounts are exempt from branch-level verification. Must be served under keyholder protocols. No restrictions, no questions asked." Every word now read like an indictment. On the ground floor, customers began demanding withdrawals. Some walked out, never looking back. The silence that was once considered a symbol of prestige now felt like the hush before collapse. The dominoes had started falling, and no one at Sterling Crest could stop them. Samuel Hayes said nothing to the press, no press conference, no rebuttal video. All afternoon, as media swarmed the headquarters of Briarstone Capital and headlines exploded, "Billionaire humiliated in bank he once helped build." Sterling Crest Bank faces unprecedented ethical crisis. Samuel remained completely silent. But at exactly 5:34 p.m., a message appeared on Sterling Crest Bank's internal system. Sent to all strategic partners, branch directors, financial advisors, and board members. It was only 162 words long, no anger, no accusations, no recap of events, just a memorandum. Digitally signed, S. Hayes. To the leadership and staff of Sterling Crest Bank, I once believed that if one enters a space with respect, silence, and adherence to process, one would be seen for the value they carry. Today, I must admit, respect is not found in clothing or credentials, and justice is never default, unless defended by those with the power to uphold it. I did not walk away because I was insulted. I walked away because the system confirmed what I've long tried to deny, that sometimes to be treated as an ordinary person, you must first hold extraordinary power, and that is injustice. Samuel Hayes. The entire system froze. At headquarters, Victor Tran ignored calls from major investors. At Marston Square branch, Rachel Moore sat motionless, hands resting on the document, unable to read it again. And from that moment forward, Samuel's silence became the most damning accusation of all. No lawsuits, no revenge, just the truth. And one man who once believed, choosing to let go. That afternoon, a dark grey vehicle with internal credentials pulled up outside the main entrance of Marston Square branch. 3 people stepped out, 2 of them members of the Ethics and Compliance Council from Sterling Crest Bank headquarters. At the same time, the internal email system flashed a red alert. Subject urgent. Notice of investigation into discriminatory conduct, Marston Square. Body, All employees involved in this morning's events will be issued summonses and placed on immediate suspension pending formal review. 4 sealed envelopes were laid on the front desk, each stamped. Confidential Conduct Review. Craig Dawson, branch manager, stepped out trying to maintain composure, but the confusion in his eyes betrayed him. As he read the words indefinite suspension, he shouted, "I followed protocol. I didn't know who he was. I just—" But the head of the council calmly replied, "It's exactly because you didn't know, and still chose to act that way, that this is the problem." At reception, Rachel Moore sat still, eyes red-rimmed. She didn't cry, just folded her hands on her lap and stared at the notice. Failure to uphold professional responsibility in assisting a priority client. Intentional mishandling of client intake protocol. Philip Graves leaned against the wall, hands in his pockets. Halfway through his letter, he scoffed, "So we all get hanged because some guy in a cheap coat fooled us." No one answered. His words fell into silence, another exhibit of why his name was on that list. Ethan Clark, the young associate, trembled as he opened his envelope. Reading the last lines, his hands dropped to his sides. Failure to report observed violations, neglect to intervene during public misconduct, breach of professional ethics. He turned to Brandon Lee, who still insisted, "I just followed the group. I didn't say anything offensive directly. I'm mid-level. I don't make the decisions." But the ethics officer shook his head. "Not intervening is a decision too, and that choice is now under formal review." In under 45 minutes, everyone involved was instructed to leave the premises. A temporary staff team was brought in. A new acting manager was transferred from the Northern District. On the internal announcement board, a single line remained. Effective immediately, all client interactions at Marston Square branch will be overseen directly by the Corporate Ethics Committee. No one spoke. Each individual, from the most dismissive to the most silent, now faced one thing: themselves. And the question that came too late: what if I had chosen differently? 1 week later, Holden City basked in gentle sunlight, the kind that didn't sting the skin but was sharp enough to make those accustomed to power instinctively pull their collars higher, as if shielding themselves from a gaze they could no longer ignore. Samuel Hayes appeared at a local vocational training center for at-risk youth, quietly funded by the Briarstone Foundation under the name of an anonymous benefactor. No chauffeur, no media, no security entourage. He wore the same old ash-grey coat, the one Philip Graves had once mocked for looking like it belonged to a man sleeping under the Southgate Bridge. Inside the community room, a small group of volunteers was helping students prepare their apprenticeship applications. Among them stood Philip Graves, no longer a banking professional, but a man relearning from scratch. Relearning how to listen, not just speak. When their eyes met, Philip didn't flinch, he didn't bow, he didn't apologize. But in his gaze was something that hadn't been there a week ago: awareness. Samuel gave a slight nod. No judgment, no smile. Then turned and walked outside to the courtyard, where a small oak plaque read, "Teach dignity before ambition. Samuel Hayes, founder, Briarstone Foundation." Sunlight brushed across his shoulders as he opened his briefcase. Inside, the same stack of documents that had once been flung onto a marble floor. Now uncreased, untouched, untainted. No one opened a door for him. No one extended a hand. But the entire system had been forced into silence just to listen. Because sometimes, the loudest voice is the one that chooses to walk away without speaking. No one at Sterling Crest Bank thought that day was a test, because the person who set the exam walked in quietly. No VIP badge, no formal invitation, no fanfare, and when he left, he didn't utter a single accusation. He simply let the system confront its own reflection, in the way it had treated someone who didn't fit the mold. Samuel Hayes didn't destroy the bank out of anger. He withdrew, because he realized trust cannot survive in a place that only recognizes those wearing the right color of suit. He didn't need to win with rage, lawsuits, or blood. He only needed to reveal one truth. When someone who once believed in fairness chooses to walk away, the real loss isn't his. It's the foundation that others thought would never crack. And that alone was enough to bring an empire to its knees. Not because it was defeated, but because it was undone by its own arrogance. Fire. Because some people don't show up to be angry. They come to prove that patience has limits, and that respect, if not given, will be reclaimed. And when a system loses the very person it once refused to see, it doesn't just lose a customer, it loses its chance to become what it once claimed to be.